So for those who don't know, welcome. THORChain is a decentralized exchange that enables you to swap Bitcoin with thousands of other cryptocurrencies, all layer one native tokens, no bridges or wrap tokens needed, and it's all within your self-custodial wallet. There is no KYC on THORChain. KYC means kill your customer. We do not do that, and THORChain is permissionless. THORChain's token is called RUNE, and that's spelled RUNE. You don't need to buy or hold RUNE to place a swap on THORChain, and the fees are deducted from your swap, and these fees go to buy RUNE. And this RUNE is the yield that goes to liquidity pools and nodes. There are no block rewards on THORChain. 100% of the yield is real. And THORChain is deflationary, with 5% of all rewards are swapped to RUNE and burn. THORChain has another token called TCY, Tango Charlie Yankee. This token is kind of like a preferred stock, where 10% of the protocol's revenue goes to these token holders. If you deposited crypto into savers or took out a loan on THORChain, make sure to claim your TCY token so you can start collecting this yield. And anyone can buy the TCY token as well. To swap on THORChain, go to thorchain.org, click on swap, and go ahead. And we have new features and functionality rolling out all the time. In fact, we added something called Memoless, which basically allows you to swap without needing to connect your wallet. I think it's going to be called AnySwap. Kenton can give an update on that. But guys, check it out. And if you notice any bugs whatsoever, please use the email on top of the site. We are constantly iterating and making that site better. Rujira is building a decentralized Binance on THORChain smart contract layer. It's being rolled out as we speak. And speaking of Binance, you guys, if you hold RUNE on any centralized exchange, you need to withdraw that into self-custody immediately, because they are using these tokens against us by short selling them and doing whatever else and driving the price down. And once in self-custody, you guys should look into bonding your RUNE. And a really great interface to do that is runebond.com. It is super easy. All you need to do is to choose a node, request a whitelist, and then you can bond your RUNE once approved and start earning this yield. There's a THORChain community Discord and Telegram. You can learn all about THORChain, make all kinds of friends. To go to the links, go to @Thor, THOR, @THORcommunity, all one word, account on X. You guys repost this space. If you're listening to the recording, please repost the space. We are doing amazing things over here on THORChain and on Rujira. People got to learn about it. And the only way you do it is if you share this space. Currently, there was a new upgrade pushed, 3.13. I won't get too much in that. We can get into that later. But node operators, please vote accordingly. We got a little bit of laundry here I'm going to do, and then we're going to get to introductions. I'll kick it to Kenton. I don't know if you guys noticed, limit swaps, they went back online, of course. And then we had an exponential increase in limit swap usage last night. It doubled. So before it was under 2K, and last I checked, it's almost up to $4,000. So that's really encouraging to see. And I hope we're going to continue to see that growth. One thing I wanted to talk about before we get the show starting is something Cal said in Discord. It was a long post, but I'm going to summarize it. There's a lot of talk about Near protocol and subsidizing swaps and all this thing. And I just loved how Cal juxtaposed THORChain with Near. And this is what Cal said. This is going to be a little bridged here. Meanwhile, THORChain is a completely sovereign and self-sustaining ecosystem. We have to pay for validators and security. We have open membership, rotating TSS vaults to be capture resistant. Seriously, who else will ever do this? We have a token with zero inflation and is actually deflationary thanks to the burn. The way we move forward is to make RUNE an actually stable and investable asset with a steady bonding yield of 10+%, making the TCY holders whole again, and providing a valuable service, being the only real scalable, sovereign, and censorship-resistant cross-chain DEX. Hear, hear, amen to that. Guys, I'm really excited for this episode. My name is Denny. I go by Patriot Sounds, my other account. Content creator for about, and educator for like 5 years now, I think. So quite a while. Kenton, I'll go ahead and kick it up to you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, man. Maybe I'll continue on with that comment about making THORChain sustainable. Just to so if it's true that Near really is subsidizing those trades, they can probably go on forever, right? At some point, it'll catch up to them, whoever's financing it, right? And it'll fall apart, right? It won't be able to keep going. And so I've dealt with this in the past with precious metals, like selling gold and silver. There's dealers out there that would sell for like 1% over spot or 2% or something like a really low price, and when prices were like lower than what wholesale would give dealers. And so the dealer I worked through, I was working, they're like, we don't know how it's possible that they're offering that price retail because we can't even get that wholesale. And it's like, what's going on? And basically it turns out they're running a Ponzi, and works until it doesn't. And then when those dealers blow up, you have like a few months of money in inventory that doesn't match, and so you get people that are owed gold and silver, and they don't get it. It's gone, right? The money's gone. So, but unfortunately, those things can last for a few years before it unravels, before it catches up, right? So, so that's really going on with near. It's inevitable. It's just a matter of when. And the best thing, back to the precious metals, the best thing we just did is, as a dealer, is like, listen, we've been in business for years. We're going to continue to be in business for years, and this is what it costs, and this is what we're worth, and blah, blah, blah. And then over time, you just start building that reputation of being reliable and trustworthy, and people just start getting wise to the scams and the fraud and whatever, and they just stick with you. And then that's how you be that. The dealer I'm talking about is called Miles Franklin. Now they've become one of the bigger dealers in the United States, and just by being consistent and honest and good and just delivering. So it's playing the long game, and that's what will keep THORChain surviving, is by actually making money. It's a profitable business, right? So we can outlast near, right? Right, we can keep going, and the other thing is, like, everyone's got to zoom out. Like if you add the volume on THORChain and near together, it's 0.1% of all centralized exchange volume. The people eating our lunch is Binance and Coinbase, the centralized exchanges. Like that's our real competition, and that's where we need to get our volume. And the other thing is with near, like that all their volume is coming from the wallets, and so like it's just a race to the bottom on the fees with wallets. That's why they're getting the volume. And so, like, what do you want us to compete on? Like, just start losing money too? Like, you want to compete on who can lose the most money and last the longest at losing? Like, it's not a good business. And so, and it's not just near. Like, there's other people looking to enter the space too, right? So we're going to have multiple people to worry about with the wallets, and they're all going to be fighting for lowest fees. And I would say that just shouldn't be our primary business strategy. That's why I'm focusing on the swap interface and the front end. That should be our primary growth, getting users there where we are getting all the flow, right? Because the wallet's just going to get more and more competitive. And I can add to that because of our own DEX aggregator. So the Unstoppable guys, this is part of building out the front end. We built a THORChain dedicated DEX aggregator to compete with SwapKit. So this is part of the reason what's taken so long for updates to go through on the swap interface, is that backend needs to be all built out, right? To keep doing updates, it's like doubling the work. Get the backend of the site done, so then they can just put the updates on the new backend. We should go out hopefully tomorrow. I know it's been any day now for a few weeks, but Ibex said it should be tomorrow. They're really close. And this aggregator, we can offer it to Ledger, Trust Wallet, anybody else can use it. And it'll be, so if any wallet listening, you can use our new DEX aggregator, where routes going through THORChain have 0 fees. Routes going through Maya have 0 fees. And then anywhere else, that fee is negotiable. We can talk about it. But we also have near. We have near intents in our aggregator. And so let me walk you through this, guys. So on the THORChain interface, we're going to have near intents as part of the aggregator. But all the flow, all the trades are going to prioritize through THORChain. If it doesn't trade there, it'll go to Maya. Doesn't trade there, then it goes to other, the other DEXs to get the best fill. And if it's near, it's so be it. And why are we doing that? Why support our competition? Well, the goal of the swap interface is to get users, get people on it, using it. We don't want to send people elsewhere, right? We want our site to be the one-stop shop. You can come do everything on our site. And as soon as we have to send people to another site somewhere else to go trade, then they won't come back, right? Or it's harder to get them back. And if we can encapsulate the whole user experience on our site, they're more sticky. And then what this will do is we'll start seeing what are our users actually trading, what routes are they looking for, and that aren't on THORChain, and then we can prioritize that and get those tokens on THORChain. And then we just do a switcheroo. The user doesn't know, but next time he comes, maybe a user's trading SUI. Next time he comes to THORChain and is trading on THORChain, it just be routed to THORChain. He won't know the difference, basically. So it's kind of like what THORSwap has done to THORChain over the last several months, where they just keep swapping out, Chainflip and Near instead of THORChain. We'll basically do the same thing on our site. We just swap out the other routes in lieu of THORChain, and then it is a way to make a bit of money on the side on those external routes and help finance and support the aggregator. And so maybe I should stop there. See if you have any questions, Patriot. Or I do have more updates. I can keep going, but see if that was a mouthful.
No, I don't really have any. It makes sense to me. Everything you said. Go ahead.
Okay, so hopefully tomorrow the new swap interface will go through. I'm actually looking forward to what you guys think. It's a much simpler and cleaner UI and than what's currently live. And basically the new UI is just a swap, right? And it's pretty intuitive. It'll just go through the steps. Like, do you want to connect a wallet or not? We don't have to differentiate between memless or cold swap or whatever. Just at each step of the way, how do you want to do this swap? And it'll just give you the option, the choice. So basically, it's just going to be like you're just swapping. Just go to THORChain and place a swap. So the whole conversation. Actually, I really appreciate the conversation, guys, around like cold swaps and stuff. All the feedback. I feel like everyone's been really constructive and it's been positive. I think it's great. Like with brainstorming, like you got to just throw out ideas and try stuff. And even if you think it's silly, you say it anyway, because when that process of telling somebody why it doesn't make sense can often lead to the answer. So I think everyone's brainstorming and ideas have been great. I appreciate it. Thank you. I don't think cold swaps will work as a term. And really kind of what we're looking for is like a way to just to sell this feature, right? But I don't know if we got to sell memless by itself. Like maybe we just sell the idea that you can swap anything on THORChain or swap any wallet on THORChain. So so basically, guys, this is just we're iterating in public, right, to come up with like the best way to sell this. And the goal of this site is that anyone should be able to come to the site and just be able to use it with no prior knowledge of THORChain, right? They don't have to know what a cold swap means or memless or anything like that. They should just be able to come and intuitively figure it out. The coming up for a term like any swap or whatever is really just to have how do we sell this, right? How do we promote it and write articles and talk about it on Twitter? What are we going to nickname it, call it, right? And so I think we just keep talking about it and coming up with ideas, trying different ways to explain it and sell it. I think something natural will bubble to the surface. So we are in a bear market. Sentiment sucks. Like I think we do have a bit of time on our side to figure something out. And I think as the new interface comes out, people start playing with it more. Maybe we'll come up with better ideas, better ways to sell it. But that was really the idea of trying to come up with cold swap or something else. Is like, how are we going to sell this? Like we got to sell it like kind of like a product. So so we're still debating about that. We'll figure it out. We'll get it going. So after the new UI goes through, DEX aggregation goes through, after that, then all your bug reports, the devs are going to go through and double check to see if everything's been fixed. So all of the bugs should be fixed in the new release. And then after that, the next feature to go live on the site should be limit orders and swaps and have the UI for that. So that's a swap interface. Maybe again, I'll stop there. Paige, if you have any questions, I can go into marketing.
No, dude, I think you're totally doing great. Continue.
Okay. Yeah. So quick update on marketing. We got to get some .thorchain.org emails because it's hard to get people replying to our individual emails. So we're working on those, getting Google Analytics set up between the different platforms. We're getting a bit organized now. We've got Slack and Notion going. I've never used Notion before. It's actually seems like it could be pretty good. What else? We got the TC intern is going to start all that content you guys love seeing on Twitter. I think we'll agree he's been doing a great job. They're going to start posting similar stuff on LinkedIn and Reddit and the blog, the newsletter. We want to try and get the newsletter going on the website, capturing people's emails. The blog will be a big one because that's going to help a lot with SEO. And like in theory, I think we're going to have like blog posts for like hundreds of different topics and things, all to try and like get traffic to the site. Talked to Baloney Bones about creating content. He's on board, so hopefully we can get some of the TCU content over on the blog as well. We've got paid ads in queue on the Twitter account. They're I don't know, TC intern, if you can give them a thumbs up or not. I think they're still trying to be approved. I had on my account, I got approved for crypto ads. I tried it, then I got frozen. Then I had to appeal and said, you guys already approved me. Then they unlocked it. Now I got an ad going. It appears to be live. It appears to be good. So we can use my account for posting some stuff too, but it's obviously not as good, right? We want it coming from the main account. And the issue with Twitter ads and it paying any kind of ad is they have their own internal policies. We got to be like a licensed MSB or VASP, and that's obviously not us what we're going to do. So we kind of have to like dance around the words we use, and whether we can link to the website or not, we kind of have to see what we can get away with, basically. But on my account, I should be able to get away with a lot more. So we'll see. And then all this talk about rebranding, guys, about THORSwap and THORWallet. This is not to be adversarial, so I reached out to THORWallet and the THORSwap guys just to see if they've thought about rebranding, what their thoughts are on it. So THORSwap, THORWallet, if you're listening, please reach out to me, respond, let's talk about it. Like, this doesn't have to be confrontational, right? Let's try and think of something that works for everybody. Yeah, again, the rebranding with THORChain, I don't think now is the time. I think it looked desperate and cheap, and to do it properly, it's going to take several months. So if we're going to do it, it's a big decision, and one we can't, it's not one to be made lightly, because there'd be no going back. And it's not like if we decide to rebrand today, all of a sudden everything changes today, right? It's going to take several months. So I think we keep going with what we got. There's a lot of sunk capital into this brand. If THORWallet and THORSwap don't want to change, that means there's value in the THORChain brand. So, why should we throw it away? And I think there's still value there. I think part of fixing your brand is getting rid of all the chaos. I think everyone agrees that has been a poor direction. If we can get rid of the chaos and go back to stability and trust, consistency, that'll help rebuild and get things going. So I think there's still a lot of value in the brand and way to bring it back. I don't think we have to knee jerk out of it. And that's good for me. I think that's my update on everything.
Perfect, man. That was really succinct and solid, and everything you said, I really don't have an issue with it. And I love it, man. So keep doing what you're doing. I really liked your DEX aggregation idea about, just facilitate swaps, and that gives us information about people want, and then that can prioritize people like Chad to focus maybe on chains that we may not realize are actually hotly in demand. So brilliant stuff, dude. I love it. Okay, well, gosh dang it, guys, we're here. That was a good introduction. Chad, how you doing?
Hey, man, how's it going?
It's going very, very well. I'm so glad you're here. Man, limit swaps are live. You got any update? Like,
Yep.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, limit swaps are live. I don't think they're being used very much at the current moment, which is fine. I think we're still waiting for ARBs to kind of like, start start utilizing the feature. I think there's a little bit of playing going on, but not much, which is perfectly fine at this stage. Give it some time. I think it's going fairly well at this point. Memlist is being used. I haven't seen any bugs yet with it, which is great. Which I'm hoping to see. I think that's a really big feature that I'm excited to see that start to be utilized more and more.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, if this trend continues with no bugs on the limit swap, post our update, our patches, then that means we can get rapid swaps faster, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, I think like in order for us to use rapid swaps, I want to have some confidence that arbs are putting a decent amount of liquidity into the limit swaps. Because if you don't have limit swaps, rapid swaps becomes non-practical. At least not in my view. So I like to see more adoption of the limit order feature before we start unraveling, or not unraveling, but unrolling rapid swaps.
Okay,
What do you mean when you
perfect.
say when you say not practical? You mean, or do you mean it just wouldn't be used very much?
It just means that like so if you don't have limit swaps, and that's a hypothetical scenario, that the only way you could get rapid swaps to work is that if two people happen to be trading in the reverse direction at that particular moment, right? Which maybe that's the case. Maybe there are two people trading in the opposite directions, at that particular moment. But arbs are almost always the counterparty to most trades. Like whenever you trade on THORChain, it's typically the arb that's trading the other direction to create the kind of like to correct the pool and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of assumed when putting the feature together that like we'd be leaning on arbs to utilize the feature, at least in the beginning. I'm sure UIs will expand to support this feature at some point at some point in the future. But at least on day one, I was looking for arbs to kind of utilize the feature in the beginning, because as long as they're providing liquidity on both sides of the pool, so to speak, wherever side you're trading through, there's somebody on the other side, right, which is the arb in this case. If you don't have arbs using this particular feature, then you have to wait until like, okay, someone's trading from Bitcoin ETH and someone's trading from ETH to Bitcoin. Then you could do that. But even that, I think, will require a little bit of a code change, because I was making an assumption that the arbs would be the ones, the counterparties to all these trades anyway.
Right on.
Okay, perfect. Do you have any other updates or anything recent? I know we got 3.13 that just got pushed. Chad, do you have anything you want to talk about on that front?
That one was a pretty mostly just bug patches feature. There's nothing in that particular version that's like super exciting. The one that I'm a little excited about, even though it's like really not that big of a deal, but it's one less annoyance on my plate, is that there's a functional change where in some cases some people like make a swap, and we cannot send the outbound transaction. Like it's because of some limitation on the outbound chain that doesn't allow us to send. But like the most recent example of that is there's like a tag that you can apply to an address that doesn't allow it to receive funds, or something like this on XRP. And we've seen this a few times, mostly it's around people like swapping directly to a SEX. And they're not really, down to receiving funds in that kind of way. So it doesn't really work. And so right now the funds more or less get kind of trapped. It can't send the XRP address, so to speak, and then it just kind of gets eventually just kind of gets dropped on the floor. And the coaching we made was just that, like, whenever we get in the situation where funds get trapped like this, it will either send the outbound funds to the treasury for the treasury to kind of work out. So take the outbound XRP tokens that you swap to, and then it would just swap back to BTC, for example, and send it back to your BTC address, so that it kind of auto resolves on its own.
Okay, cool. So it looks like we've got some optimizations that help with that. That's really, really cool. Kenton, did you have anything? I do have some questions. I've sourced, not too many, but I was wondering if you had anything you want to add to Chad before I get to community questions.
No, I was gonna bring up 3.13. The one thing I saw highlighted is the 82 times speed up with the advanced swap queue. So advanced swap queue is rapid swaps, right? And I'm wondering,
Yes.
how does that speed up the quotes? It's an 82 times speed increase in quotes.
Yeah, that was just because of some like performance things. So like the quotes endpoint doesn't really actually utilize the like the limit swaps kind of system because it's not helpful in doing a quote and doing limit swaps is a computationally more expensive thing than doing like a liquidity pool market swap. So by changing some of the ways, like this doesn't actually change the performance of swaps themselves. It just changed the API performance for getting a quote, which now actually, by the way, is actually slightly faster than it was on the legacy swap queue. So the newer advanced is actually slightly faster than the older one. Not that it really matters that much because like we're already the fastest API quote system in the game right now. Like I think Near is the slowest one. So whether we're like 1 second or 2 seconds to respond or even 10 seconds doesn't really matter because the swap kit's endpoint still gonna query chain flip and Near and their quotes endpoints apparently are slower. That's what I'm told at least. So it doesn't really matter that much. But it was just the API performance of the quotes endpoint was really the bug that was causing problems for launching limit swaps earlier. It was just making our API so slow that it was causing issues for SwapKit and things like that. So this was just a performance change just to kind of make it more performant to get a quote.
So I like sometimes when I'm on like THORSwap, for example, I'll have a trade there and I'm looking at all the different routes and I'm just sitting there and then every I don't know 5-10 seconds or whenever it updates, then the order will often change between
Mhm.
all the exchanges, and I'm like, what's really changed in the last minute or two? And oftentimes I'll see is THORChain will start at the bottom, but then it starts moving up, and every now and then becomes a recommended. So I'm curious, is it truly just like market gyrations, or is there some delay in the quotes going through that's affecting it? But I guess we're the fastest quotes. That I guess doesn't make sense. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, do you have any idea what's happening there? Is it really just market movements?
it is mostly market movements. So, for example, um, somebody could be doing a trade, in this particular block right now, and that trade, pushes the pool price from, $100,000 Bitcoin to $101,000 Bitcoin. I don't know. I'm making up numbers here. And if you're trading in a certain direction, that makes your kind of quote better, right? Because the pool price could be away from the market price because somebody just did a swap a second ago, and that gives you, in your particular situation, it makes you a better price execution because even though the pool price is theoretically wrong in this moment, it's wrong in a way that's helpful for you. Do you know what I mean? And so that can be part of it. The other part of it could be that the delayed outbound can shift, from block to block, depending upon like when things get sent out, whatnot. So that can like change the timing. And I actually looked this week. I did a deep dive this week with Oleg from the SwapKit team about like the mathematics of how they make recommendations. And I kind of wanted to do a deep dive into like their kind of like their algo, if you want to call it that. And the recommendation goes both based upon output, like how much tokens you're getting, right? And also performance speed, how fast does it take? And if you're all within 1 minute of each other, then it's all about output. It's all about how many coins you get. If you were more than a minute, it gets a little bit different. So it might be like 95% output and 5% speed. In extreme scenarios where you're like 15-minute difference between like all the competitors, then you can get like a 20% system, like where it's like 80% the output of the tokens and 20% the speed. So in Near's case, like Near has very slow swap times, right? Like every one of their trades, according to SwapKit, is about 27 minutes. And the reason for that, I presume, is that like Near intents as a design is not very good from an efficiency perspective because you don't know, as a solver, you don't know what the liquidity is you're going to have 5 minutes from now. You only know what you need like now based upon what people have proposed on the chain. I have ETH and I want Bitcoin or whatever the assets are, And then once it's on chain, then these solvers have to like figure, okay, they want this. Okay, how much or where can I get that Bitcoin from? I can get it from a centralized exchange. I can get it from, THORChain. I can get it from like whatever the thing is. And when you do that, that takes time because then I have to do a swap on THORChain to get the Bitcoin to fulfill this intent on Near, right? Or vice versa for, Binance or whatever. And so that just creates like a lot of slowness. And that's which is why their times are so slow at 27 minutes is part of that. And normally intense as a design, at least in my opinion, is a pretty poor in terms of like in terms of like execution as well. Because if I have to go out and acquire the Bitcoin somewhere else or some like or say somebody's trying to get like some random ERC20 token. Okay, maybe I have some USDC on the Ethereum blockchain, but I have to go capture that, ERC20 token that's somewhere, and then provide it as liquidity for the to solve this kind of intent request. But I have to pay a fee to, let's call it Uniswap, to acquire that. So if I'm going to pay, let's call it like 15 basis points to acquire from Uniswap, and then I'm going to provide that to the person who's requesting the intent, and I want my own 15 basis points. So then you're kind of concatenating the fees of multiple locations, right? Like because the solver is just going out and fetching it through some cost mechanism somewhere else. Whereas on THORChain directly, if you have like a liquidity pool, the liquidity is already there, right? You don't have to go out and spend money to acquire the ETH or whatever because it's already in the pool. It's already fully present, and it's also available right now in this particular second. I don't have to go out and find the ETH and then get it this and then transfer it to there and blah 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 and put it in. Like so, it's like intense as a design, is naturally slower and naturally more expensive. That's not the case here with the expensive part because Near has a $540 million investment, and they're using that their money bags to basically probably lose money on every trade to provide liquidity for basically free, and that's just their way of kind of buying their way. It's kind of like pay to play video games where you don't really get anywhere unless you spend $20 to get the upgrades or whatever the hell it is. It's a little bit kind of like that in some ways. Um, so we have like structurally we have like some better situations in terms of how we do things on our side. So I find it quite interesting in that sense.
So this is actually a good example of just continuing to improve THORChain, keep making things better that should be done regardless of any competition.
Yeah.
And it will naturally help us compete because if the limit swaps get huge and there's lots of liquidity there, then rapid swaps advanced queue should be very active, which should mean the swap times on THORChain should collapse. Things should move very quickly, and that'll help us get in front in the quotes, get up higher, get prioritized.
Yeah, I've actually been like poking at a couple ideas around this. One was trying to bring down our swap times to be as fast as possible, right? If we can't compete with Near on execution because they're using their money bags to pay for everything between fees and even gas, then we can probably compete on time because they're naturally like a pretty slow system. So one of the things I've been thinking about, and I've got a PR that I've opened up that's like in a draft status, where we do basically like it's kind of like zero conf trading, not exactly zero conf. It's like a kind of like it. And so basically what happens is on a UTXO chain like Bitcoin, where you get 10-minute block times, we basically would say that once we get consensus on the mempool that this Bitcoin's coming into us, we basically do the trade now. Before the Bitcoin has even hit our wallet, we execute the trade as if it already was, and we swap to, from Bitcoin to ETH or whatever. And then we hold the ETH until it gets the confirmation on chain, like until we get like a one conf on Bitcoin. And that way and then once we get the confirmation, like the trade is just like the outbound is just like instantly sent, right? So you've already done the streaming swap and you've already done the delayed outbound before the confirmations even hit. And then when you get the confirmation, you just send it out. So that means that like technically, like if you were to swap like 0.8 Bitcoin right now on THORChain, it would take about approximately 20 minutes for that trade to execute. But with this code change, you would basically have that to be about 10 minutes, right? And then every trade below that size would always be 10 minutes, right? For that one comp thing. And then every trade after that, like in terms of larger sizes of trades, would be effectively like minus 10 minutes off whatever the trade time would actually be. So that's like, it's an idea that I'm playing around with to see if we can get this to going so that we can have we can improve fast execution specifically on Bitcoin, because that's obviously got the large like 10-minute block times. There are other UTXO chains we mempool on, like Doge and whatnot. Those are a little much smaller and faster times, so it has less of an effect. But obviously, Bitcoin is like the big beast, right? Obviously, it's like the largest asset, largest pool. So even implementing this feature just for that one coin is probably worthwhile. Like it would probably provide enough value to warrant the time and energy to get it put together.
I love it. I think it's a great idea. Compete on time, right? There's other ways to compete than just price. That's pretty cool, man.
Yep.
What about batched outbounds where you can like aggregate, several Bitcoin trades into one? Would that help improve times as well, or is that just with the improved costs? How do batched
I
outbounds
think that
affect
would
things?
it wouldn't make things faster necessarily. Well, generally speaking, it would not make things faster in terms of execution. In rare occasions, it can. Like if we have like a big outbound queue, and it's just taking forever to get through the queue, then yes, batch outbound would clear that queue, in a minute or two, rather than waiting like an hour. Like, and we've seen that, and like we haven't seen it lately, not for a few years, but we've seen that with the outbound queue gets really kind of like backed up, and it's just people and all the TSS signers are just like signing like crazy, trying to get all these transactions out. But that should make it more efficient in terms of like gas utilization. So we spend less on gas per transaction or per swap, and I think that's beneficial in its own.
Maybe Chad, can you remind everybody what the outbound or the batched outbounds are?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of how technical I want to make this. Well, on a high level, it's just that like instead of when we sign transactions to send to Bob and Alice and Kenny or whatever, we sign 3 different transactions. It's almost like each person's taking their own little independent Uber, right? And Uber's quite efficient. Like you go to your place really quickly. But obviously, it's not the most. It's probably the most expensive way of moving around in a city or town is going by Uber. And batch outbound is kind of conceptually doing what a bus is to Uber, right? You're signing a single transaction, and you're sending out multiple outbound transactions, right, from a single signature. And by doing so, you're also like taking up less space on the chain on the block. How much it depends on what we're talking about. In Bitcoin, you'd probably you'd consume like less bits in the block, so to speak. For ERC20s, it have almost zero impact because of how ERC20s work. But it depends on what asset we're talking about, depends what chain we're talking about. But in effect, we're talking about moving from a Uber-like model where we send out individual transactions to individual people one by one, to a kind of a batch bus-like model where we're signing a single transaction and sending out multiple outputs to multiple locations at the same time. That's going to make it a lot easier to do things like, when we move to DKLS in the future, that's something we'd like to do. Going from, DKLS is a lot faster from a signing perspective. GD20 has, I think, like 7 or 8 key sign signatures, key sign rounds when you're doing a key sign transaction, signing something. DKLS, I think, is like 3 or 4, if my memory serves me correctly. So it's a lot faster. But we also want to move from like having 6 Asgard vaults to hypothetically we want to do 1. But I would presume that going from 6 Asgard vaults to 1, even with DKLS, will be slower than what we're at the signing speed of what we're doing today. Which is why batch outbound becomes even more valuable, because you have to do less signatures. For like, instead of signing 10 Bitcoin transactions, you can sign 1 hypothetically, right? It also kind of forces us to do like UTXO consolidation a little bit more efficiently too, because you're signing multiple VINs for V out, but that's another technical thing I'm not going to get too much into the weeds about. But yeah, it is something I want to see. I want to see happen. I know Liquify's been working on this feature for a little while now. I've been helping them from time to time when I have time to kind of divert my attention towards them to help them in these things. But I think we're probably going to implement it for Bitcoin and ETH, and maybe not for the other chains, just because it's just not enough volume to warrant the energy and time it would take to support it, unless it's like a really easy thing. I'm not sure how it would even work on Solana. I'm not familiar with the technical implications, implementations of Solana, but that is something we're definitely going to look into in the future.
Awesome, right on. I'll reach out to Liquify guys too and ask them. See, I know they're working on it, but I haven't heard about an update in actually several months from them. So yeah.
We'll get it shipped no matter what.
Pardon?
We'll get it shipped.
Do you
at some point? It's just lower priority right now.
Okay, gotcha. Actually, yeah, I'll follow up with Liquify, see where they're at. Patriot, do you have any?
There's another interesting feature I've been thinking about, and this is not like rock solid. It's something I've been chatting with a couple people about. I'm curious, Kenton, to hear your feedback. And one of the interesting ideas I've been thinking about is that like we can make the basis points that you pay in your swap fee to be relative to how far the pool price is from the Oracle price of like Bitcoin, for example. Right. So if the two are the same, then you're going to pay 10 basis points, whatever the min basis points is set up right now, or 5 or 10, 15, whatever it is. But if it's different, where the market price or the Oracle price is higher than the THORChain's price, you would get less of a fee if you were selling the asset, and you would pay more of a fee if you were buying the asset. If that makes sense. Hopefully I got that direction correct. So the idea is that like even if the pool price is slightly off from the market price, the network validators who push the Oracle price into the network can, take it kind of the last mile. You know what I mean? Kind of like when you order a package, it's like that last mile is like kind of the hardest mile, if you know what I'm talking about. And so the validators themselves can do a form of arbitrage, sort of. It's kind of a weak word to use, but it's kind of arbitrage, like to make sure that your execution is at the market price at all times. At least the quote is. The quote would be at the market price.
Well, maybe not the validators, but the network is incentivizing users to push the price towards the Oracle price, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it that way. That's a different way to look at it. I would look at it more of like the validators who push the Oracle price into the network give the protocol the information about like how far off is our pool price from the market price, and then in order to give you the market price rather than the pool price, it changes the basis points to kind of more match it. Do you know what I mean?
Network would change. The protocol would change the basis points. So it's not the nodes individually changing it.
Right. It's the nodes who provide the Oracle price. Right. They're the ones that are querying Coinbase and Binance, and so they put together the Oracle price of Bitcoin or whatever asset we're talking about. But then the protocol with that information, the actual code, would codify kind of the slipping of the basis points, either up or down, relative to which direction you're going, to give you the market price, at least at the quote, on the quotes at the start of your swap of the quote, to be always at the Oracle price, rather even if the pool price is slightly off. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I think
maybe surface level makes sense to me. Sorry, who was that? Go ahead.
yeah, that was Slamdowner. Just it definitely sounds like something that would be interesting to experiment with. I guess in normal market conditions, when the price is ranging, it should help getting a better execution at the market price. It would just be interesting to see how that plays out in sort of extreme, pump or dump environments where everyone is going to, I guess, be trading away from the market price, and it would be good to try and validate to make sure that we still get volume in that scenario.
Yeah, actually, like I wouldn't consider this to be like I said, it's kind of like the last mile of delivering a package kind of thing. It's not going to deliver the whole package. So if you're right, if you're in a situation where the whole market is dumping Bitcoin because we got like a flash crash situation or something like this feature wouldn't you know wouldn't fix the pool price from the market price because the price could be falling faster than the arbitrage bots can arbitrage, right? In a theoretical scenario. And this would not like get you the rest of the way. It's almost like a last mile kind of help to get it like just right, just perfectly right. Because even like the arbitrage bots can't actually get an arbitrage bot can never put the pool price to be equal to the market price, right? And the reason why that is because they always have to pay swap fees when they do that. And so they always have to like within, if the pool price is X, market price is X. If you're charging 15 basis points, you're not going to get anything closer than 15 basis points to the market to the market price because of the fees that's being paid. And so this would be a way of like kind of taking that last mile, so to speak, to get it exactly right. That's the
What
theory. That's the idea. I don't know. We can experiment with it and try it and talk about it, but we'll see.
No, I love the idea. This is maybe let's rewind a bit to first principles. Why does it matter, or would it matter to be as close to the Oracle price as possible?
Well, the reason why is because if say the Bitcoin price on THORChain is $100,000, let's just say, and then on the rest of the market, like on Binance, for example, it's $105,000, right? So there's a difference between Binance and THORChain. Now, if you are trying to sell Bitcoin, you're not going to want to sell it on THORChain because we'll give you $100,000. You'd rather sell it on Binance because Binance will give you $105,000 in this hypothetical situation, right? But also, if you're looking to buy Bitcoin, you're not going to want to buy it on Binance. You're going to want to buy it on THORChain because THORChain's $5,000 cheaper than Binance. And so it creates this kind of situation where that's where the arbitrage comes into place because you're going to sell here and you're going to buy there to push the price between THORChain and Binance from 105 to 100,000 back to some sort of like middle between the 2 points, right? That's what arbitrage bots are more or less doing. And what we're doing is that like instead of requiring arbitrage bots to move that last kind of mile to get everything just right, especially when prices move quite small quite quickly all the time, right? This would hopefully kind of like have us shadow the market price at all times. So we're always going to be executing the best possible quote we can give you for relative to the market. Otherwise, if we just stay the way without that, we're at $100,000 per Bitcoin, Binance is 105. Sometimes we'll give you a better price because we're behind the market, and sometimes if you're swapping the other direction, we give you a worse price. But we always just want to give you the best possible price we can give you, no matter what, no matter which direction you're going.
So yeah, so my smooth brain is the price on THORChain is just the only difference between it and the Oracle price is just the fees. The cost to are between THORChain and the other exchanges.
Yeah.
And so if we want to get closer to the Oracle price, one way to do it is just lower our fees, right? And lower, so we should get there. And so I've been thinking, like for on trade assets, have lower fees, 1 basis points, or follow Binance's commission schedule, where you have more volume, you get cheaper commissions. A way to get our tighter spreads on THORChain. It sounds like what you're suggesting is instead of giving traders a discount on the volume based on the volume they trade, you're going to give traders a discount based on how close they can get the price to the Oracle, which is our real goal. That's our goal, is to get the pool price close to the Oracle as we can, because then in turn, that is what we should really drive our volume. Because we're going to get better quotes wherever people are looking at us. Like is that making sense? So that your idea can replace the reduced fees by volume idea.
Yeah, well, you don't have to replace it. You can do both, right? Like you can say, you can say that the base, basis points is, let's just call it 15 basis points is the basis points. And then we can say, well, we're going to increase it or decrease it 5 points based upon the volume of that particular pool over the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, hour, whatever. I don't know, some number. And so then you go from, your 15 basis points. Okay, there's been a lot of volume, so we're going to increase it to 20. Then on top of that 20, you then say, okay, are we close to the pool price and the market price, or are we way the hell off, right? And then you can either add or take away, based upon that 20 number. So you can do them both. You don't have to do just one or the other.
It's pretty interesting, man.
Yeah,
I like it. Yeah, sounds cool to me.
Yeah, I'm nerding out over here, you guys. I love this stuff so much. It's so freaking interesting. Gosh dang, I wish I could do this forever. All right, so we had Slam Bammer spoke. I want to just give Leo Dex a shot to speak if they have any questions or anything real quick. If you're there, Cal, I suspect.
Hey, yeah, it is Cal. Yeah, I'm also nerding out. It's a great discussion. Yeah, two things. One was on THORChain having the fastest quotes. That is 100% true. So we actually fetch them individually, and we show them to you like as they, as the request comes back. So if you go to LeoDex, you'll actually see THORChain, the route quote populates faster than all the others. And then near intense is the slowest by a very significant margin. And then second thing is we released support for memoless, so I'm pretty excited about it, and we're calling it instant swap. So allowing anyone to come to LeoDex and then essentially populate a memoless swap and then just scan the QR code and it's done. So we support all 11 of the memoless supported assets right now. So
that's awesome.
I'm happy with it, and we're starting to see some usage. Yeah, it's very cool. Great work on it.
Yes, that's awesome. I'm happy to see you guys, playing with the edge here, so to speak, and implementing memoless and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, is there? I guess if I were to leave it with a question, is there, what are the plans in terms of adding more assets to memoless?
Well, memoless works with like anything. So any swap, you can do an add liquidity, you can do a secure asset deposit or withdrawal. Memoless is agnostic to what is in the memo. It supports anything and everything. Getting more assets is something we were very interested in doing in general. There's like two things that I'm actively working on. One is to get it so that individual validators can either choose to support some external chain or choose not to support, and changing our kind of security design from everybody supports everything to you just opt into the things that you want to support, and of course you only get the fees collected for the chains that your validator supports. This should make it a lot faster and easier to add more chains, and also allow us to scale to have dozens of chains without being overtly complicated for everybody to support dozens of chains necessarily. You can support as many or as little as you choose to support. That's one thing. And the other thing we want to do, well, actually, that's actually three things. That's one. Second thing is we want to do our own form of intense, similar to Near. It would support any asset, but it's really intending more for long tail assets. So we want to be as diverse as Near is in terms of like the number of assets, the number of chains that we support. They have a little bit easier time because they're much more centralized. So adding new chains, they can add like 5 chains in a day if they really wanted to, so to speak. So they can move a lot quicker than we can because they're so centralized. But that's okay. I don't mind that part. We'll keep an eye on things and we'll just add chains as fast as we can. And then once you have a chain added, our intent would allow you to swap, to and from any asset on that chain, and except for the ones that are, well, not any asset. Only the assets that are whitelisted in our network would be allowed, just because we don't want to have like fake ETH tokens or fake Uniswap tokens or something like this, and have people get kind of scammed on THORChain. But basically, you could support any arbitrary asset on the network.
Doesn't there an update has to go through on the router before to enable like ERC20s and whatnot from MLS?
Yes, I think that's true. I think Router V6 does that. I think you're right.
And then I'm curious, why can't we do, or at least it doesn't work for me. Can we
Sorry, say it
Rune,
again. Your audio cut off for a second.
oh, sorry, the Rune token. We can't trade that on MLS.
Oh, you mean directly from the Rune token? You mean?
I believe that's what I was trying. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Sell Rune to buy.
I think that's right. I think when I implemented the memoless feature itself, I was thinking about chains that's very hard to write memos to. But we can. I mean, it wouldn't be that big of a change, to be honest with you, to add memoless for native assets like Rune. I guess historically I just didn't think of that or think of the use case for that. But if you think it'd be really valuable to the protocol to support that, like it wouldn't be that hard of a code change, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I think it is.
Yeah,
it's kind of just being honest with.
Yeah, that's what I meant by more assets. Sorry to cut you off, Ken. That's what I meant by more assets for memoless. Because I know a couple people were asking about doing a Rune swap with, for example, something like multisig, and then wanting to do a Rune swap with memoless on another interface.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can add it. I'll put it as a task item for myself to support it. I didn't even consider it, to be honest with you, when I was putting the feature together. So, but I'll get on it, get it done.
Yeah, please, because I can. I'm always thinking of the ways to sell against something. Where could the FUD come from? And there's like, oh, you can buy Rune on memoless, but you can't sell it. These guys are tricksters trying to buy their token. You can't sell it. You're stuck in it. So we definitely gotta be able to sell Rune for sure.
Yeah. Well, of course you could sell it, just not using that particular feature, but nonetheless, yeah.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, though. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And to tack on, someone also asked me about the Rune memoless. So that's another person, not just put it out there, that wanted it too. So I guess it's hotly demanded, Chad.
Apparently. I didn't know when I was putting it together, but here we are.
That's okay.
Hey, it's good. It's a good problem to have. Like when you launch something and you attract a user you didn't expect, or a use case or something like this, just in general startup world, it's a good problem to have. You always engage with it and satisfy that stuff whenever you can.
Well, that's what's good too. Like nothing is static on THORChain. Like it's always constantly improving. If you waited till you had everything working and done, then nothing would go live, right? You got to just
Right, of course.
Right, and I'm experiencing this with the swap interface and stuff like that, and I appreciate everyone's patience and stuff. But it's like all these things we want to do is just one thing at a time. We got to just get stuff going, get it out, and then start working on the next thing.
Well, you guys, we have another speaker up here, and they're also they're going to be our guest for Saturday as well. So a little sneak peek here. Bio Labs, is that Hassan? Hassan? I'm sorry if I say your name.
Yes, it's Hassan. Yes, it's my. You can say it, Hassan.
Hassan. Okay, perfect. What's going on?
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to build essentially another wallet that supports THORChain, and essentially our plan is to work with SwapKit, and any chain integrated on SwapKit, we want to have it in, and that would include, of course, supporting THORChain. Initially, our goal was to directly integrate THORChain, but we realized since our goal is to do more of a more of front-end work, where we're going to have payment cards, we want to have bill payments, we really want to build this sort of Web3 neobank, and it would be no KYC. And we're also very big fans of Monero, so I would want to come here. I wanted to ask about the Monero integration and how you guys would deal with any regulatory pressure, and whether or not this is something that has moved forward to the next step.
Can I add on to that real quick? Because that was
a
question from the community as well, particularly with for those who don't know, Exodus is removing XMR support, right? Monero support. So I think this is becoming a hot button issue. So with that being said, I'll kick it to you, Chad.
Which part should I start first? You want to start with the government pressure question?
Sure.
How do I want to answer this one? I am less concerned about that than I was a few years ago, to be honest with you. I think trying to think of the best way to phrase it. I'd be very careful with my words here. I think we've become decentralized enough that it's very difficult for a government party to want to intercede. There's not enough people in the United States to cause that significant enough of an issue. And once you get to a place where you have to like operate, across international, barriers, it just becomes a lot harder to do anything, as you could probably just naturally guess. Generally speaking, I think a lot of these kind of agencies, they're not looking for take on the most difficult things. They're looking to take on the easiest things, and they'd rather be find quick and easy solutions to possibly even win some money in some cases, to get things supported. So like for example, like we saw a couple of years ago, we saw some illicit funds coming through THORChain, and there was some government pressure on some of the UIs to add KYC, not KYC, but add on-chain analysis to figure out whether funds are illicit or not. And that's really, to be honest, like that whole idea to me is quite silly, because a lot of those chain analysis companies, in order to evade them, all you have to do is just like transfer your stolen Ethereum from your current wallet to like 3 more wallets, and then it just gets basically dropped by like chain analysis or similar companies, and then all of a sudden now you can do your trades and whatever you're trying to do. So they're not very effective at what they do, to be honest with you. I mean, they're good for investigation purposes, but they're not good for like, stopping trading of certain things or whatever. Like this, that's just not practical. And so there was this kind of push a couple of years ago to look into that, and they spoke to centralized entities, UI specifically, to make some changes, and they felt the pressure to do so, and they for, gave into that pressure, which I'm not even judging them, that maybe that's the right thing to do in their cases. But for us, it's just like, if you really wanted to do something like that, if you're like the the DOJ or whatever, not to mention that this administration doesn't really give two shits about crypto in the sense of that previous administrations. It just would take so much time and energy, and it's just not enough volume on THORChain. Like we had like a $1.5 billion volume passed through THORChain, which is obviously a lot of money, but that wasn't enough to really trigger anything. Like I'm just less and less concerned. Like as time goes on, I am less and less concerned about government agencies getting involved with the protocol, to be honest with you. I was very concerned about it in the beginning, like back in 2020, 2021. And we made some design choices to optimize for that scenario. But in hindsight, I think that we were being a little bit too not much sure the paranoid is the right word, but we were being a little bit too over the top about it, And as time goes on, and as crypto's become more adopted, and all this kind of stuff, I just get less and less concerned. Which, by the way, like the same thing. Like if we do this feature where an individual validators could opt in or opt out of certain chains, like this won't be some sort of big giant vote that we have about Monero, adding Monero to THORChain. Validators will just independently say, like, I like for Monero, I'm gonna go ahead and add it, and other ones will say they won't. And as long as we get a decent number, 10, 20 nodes or something like this, which I think will be easily be able to get, then it won't be much of an issue.
I'm actually curious about also the fact, I mean, you went over a lot of points, and the point you made about chain analysis is very true. One, that it is maybe not as effective, but also that most like front ends, we sort of have to implement them. I know for us, we got like our advisors told us we should have chain analysis just to avoid legal trouble.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
there's definitely that. But for Monero, for the Monero integration, I'm curious if there is like some sort of blacklist resistant. Like, what if a country, for example, when Tornado Cash was blacklisted by the US, it wasn't even a matter of, we're taking down Tornado Cash. It was just about, if you dare use their service, you get a $10 million fine or you go to prison for 10 years. I think that's how their sanctions work.
Yeah.
So they were basically, everyone was disincentivized from using that product. And I'm curious if THORChain has any implementations, or if a country tried something like that, they wouldn't be able to necessarily enforce it because they couldn't, let's say, figure out or track down who was using what.
Yeah, I mean, the difficult part in that scenario for the regulator is that, like, what is the so when a Tornado Cash, they say like, okay, here's the smart contract, here's the address, don't use this thing, right? But THORChain doesn't have that because we churn every 3 days. So then it becomes like, oh, don't use this Bitcoin address, and then we churn, and then it's a brand new Bitcoin address, and
Okay.
that one's not sanctioned, you know. So then you'd have to have this whole thing where like the regulatory industry would have to like update their things every 3 days, which is they're just not geared to do something like that up for obvious reasons. Like they've just never seen something like that before. So I don't know. I'm not terribly concerned about it, to be honest.
Yeah, all right, that makes sense. I mean, I do think that THORChain adding Monero would give it a very big edge over like competitors, especially because I wouldn't say that all competitors are as decentralized as THORChain. And the main thing that me personally brought me to THORChain, like when I started and it kept me there, was the fact that it was very decentralized. Like nothing can stop it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, we've designed for decentralization from the get go, for a good reason too. You know. Yeah, like I said, I'm not. I'm hopeful we add Monero at some point. It's the most difficult chain to add to THORChain by a mile. And we got a lot of things. We got a lot of chains we want to add, of course. I don't know the timing when that's going to happen. Depends on a lot of things, but like, I'm hoping we do it, and hoping that a sufficient number of validators agree and add the chain.
I have one second question if we have the time
Mm-hmm.
for it. So basically, as a front end like us, we can't only integrate with THORChain for competitive reasons. Like if we only have THORChain, we won't get all the users because we will not have all the chains. We will not allow swapping across, all the different chains that, let's say, Maya Protocol, Chainflip, or the other bridges offer.
Yep.
But at the core, I'm still a very big THORChain supporter, and I'm curious. Lately, I've seen many like competitors post about how, look, we have better rates than THORChain, and I was curious, what is the idea? Like, is there any idea or innovation that the THORChain team is looking to implement in order to bring it back as the number one rates, at least for like Bitcoin and Ethereum?
Yes. So here's when we implemented streaming swaps a couple years ago. We, in effect, it was not just about making better prices, but it allows us to set our prices, to arbitrarily set, how much you're paying in fees in your swaps. And so we can use Mimir and configuration stick. We can configure it from to be 1,000 bips or 1 bip or anywhere in between. So it's not really a question of like, what can we do to get lower fees? Because if we want lower fees, we could do it right now. The question is like, how much, like if you give 0 fees, then obviously you're producing no yield, and that's not good for, I need to run all this infrastructure as an owner operator, if I'm not collecting any fees, right? Like it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense other than like, altruism. So getting to better fees is like, we can do that today easily. The question is like, how do we balance between volume and fees, right? We want to collect fees. Like it's not really about getting a lot of volume, but a more accurate way of talking about it is like, you want to collect as many fees as possible. Like the more fees that THORChain collects, the more valuable the protocol is. It's not about the volume necessarily, although volume and fees are somewhat correlated to some degree, right? But if you charge like 1 bip fees, which we've done even recently, and we got like, I don't know, I think it was like 60, 70% of the volume of the entire market when we went to 1 bip. Yeah, we got a lot of volume, but we collected very little in fees, right? So it's just a question of like, how do we balance as a community, like of how much fees versus volume do we want to actually do? And that's what we're doing, the fee experiments we're doing right now. We're trying 1 basis point, 5, 10, 15, 20. We're setting them back and forward, all around just to get a good sense of like what it looks like. It seems like we're probably gonna be heading towards like either like the 10 or 15 kind of range is what we're kind of probably thinking about. and maybe being a little bit smarter about how we charge fees, like instead of being static about it, charge more fees and more volatile times and less fees and less volatile times to kind of optimize our kind of fee collection strategy to collect more yield, per your average swap. We can't really compete with Near in their current situation. They are paying, out of pocket for gas, for fees. I even hear a rumor that they're like looking to prepay swap kit for the swap kit fee, so that they're paying swap kit for the swap kit's fee as well as paying the liquidity provider or the solver on the near intense design, just so that the swapper experiences zero fees whatsoever, including affiliate fees. That's just their strategy of like, let's just blow the market with huge amounts of money to get as much volume as possible, capture as many integrators as possible. Obviously, that doesn't like sustain itself very well. It's going to have to stop at some point. But to be fair, they do have, $500 million of investment, which is a lot more than we did. Like we had like in the beginning, we had like $1.5 million of investment into THORChains, like to building THORChain and getting it executed, which is obviously a lot less money than what they're talking about. So there's not much we can do about that. Which is why I'm going to start focusing on like being more competitive on the timing side and being more performant and faster trades.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm actually not worried about, because if you think of a treasury as, let's talk about war for a second. If a treasury is your army, right? Our army would be much smaller than maybe a Near protocol, or maybe another protocol pops up and does the same thing. The important thing in any war is logistics. And I think our model, when we have pools and that we can, exist on arbitrage alone for the most part, I think the logistic battle is totally in our favor. And then additionally, Chad, to all the advancements, optimizations, the rapid swaps, Ruggiero and app layer, we're going to have all these new things. I feel perfectly comfortable. I think the first principles are firmly on our side. And to Kenton's point as well, and to your point, it's an unsustainable strategy. So we just got to wait it out, I think. But I really, out of that, I really don't lose a lot of sleep, if any sleep at all, on this.
I think one way to maybe compete against them is, during the time where they're burning themselves out by paying out of pocket, THORChain could integrate specific routes that they know, for example, Near either wouldn't be able to integrate them, or either they could not or would not, and one of them would be Monero. I know I'm pushing very hard for it, but I am a big fan. But I do think it would be one of the things where, in the short term, at least until Near burns out, THORChain would be able to collect fees and sustain itself. I mean, I'm sure THORChain can sustain itself without it, but I'm saying it would be able to collect more fees and get an edge on Near intense. And I had another point, but I sort of forgot about it. It was about what you said on the. I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, I remembered. So basically, would you say that the only reason why THORChain does not have the best rates as of now would be because of it charging higher fees, and not because of like price execution or the rate of the prices?
Yeah, because we can charge as high or as little in fees as we want to. It's an arbitrary number we can configure the network to be. So I think the only reason why we're actually losing volume right now is just because we're not subsidizing every trade.
Buyer Labs, can I ask you a question? Instead of using SwapKit, why don't you use the new THORChain aggregator, where we won't charge you any fees on trades you send to THORChain or Maya, and there won't be fees sent if you send trades elsewhere. And we do have Near included in that aggregator as well, so you can save yourself the fees you pay SwapKit.
Well, the first reason we're integrating SwapKit is because SwapKit has 1TX transactions. Like basically, you can go from like a Solana token to like an Ethereum token, and instead of it being multi-swap, you sign one transaction and it goes directly from there, from one to the other. And it's the same reason why we decided to use SwapKit over Rango, because SwapKit has a better execution of it. And at least for the long term, we plan to even at some point maybe build our own system, or integrate different systems. But for now, because we are, once again, our app is so big, we have so many features, And at first, we were going to spend a lot of time to build the swapper, but then Diederik, who also worked on DeFi Spot, told me, look, we tried this on DeFi Spot where we tried to build our own router, and we spent so much time on it, we like burned everything instead of building the full product. So, right, you know, at BR Labs, we learned from that mistake that they made, and we're saying, okay, we're going to instead build the full app, and we're going to just, the swapper is just going to be a feature in the app, and later we're going to, you know, develop on it. So the thing is, I'm not very familiar with your system. I would have to take a look. I'd say the number one thing that we really care about is the user experience. So if our users can go from any like ETH token to any Solana token very easily in one go, that would be number one. For the fees, that would be great. Yeah, because we do want to launch and give like a zero fee at launch or very, very low. And with SwapKit, I think they agreed to do some sort of promotion with us, but once again, I think I'll just have to take a look. If you can send me the link, I'll be happy to look at it.
It's brand new, so definitely, yeah, absolutely take a link. And like this is a thing, talking to the devs on this DEX aggregator, like they want to include routes to Monero that go through a centralized exchange, but that don't require KYC. And I don't want to have that on the THORChain site, but I mean it's something that they could add, you know, if you're that interested in it. But there's.
I'm sorry, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Is my mic working? Yeah, okay. So I just want to add one last thing. I just remembered that's very, very important, and it's App Store approval. So we've been running into, when we launched our beta, we wanted to launch it on App Store directly instead of test flight, and we ran into a lot of issues where they wouldn't allow us because we used the Rango API, and Rango directly had 1inch and Uniswap like literally spelled out in the code, and they told us that's not allowed. So because of that, we couldn't launch with the swapper. And now with SwapKit, we have a plan to essentially launch with the swapper included. You know, it's not guaranteed, but we have a lot, like some backup plans. So that would be number two. If your swapper cannot like guarantee us App Store listing, well, not guarantee because they're not guaranteeing us, but I mean, if your swapper doesn't provide us any advantage to App Store listing, it's not optimal because it's very hard to get on the App Store.
No, that's great. Thank you. Good feedback. I will let the guys know, but it's brand new. Like it's just been developed, right? But
I mean,
the
if
point
it's brand new, it's an advantage, maybe.
The point of it is to compete with SwapKit. So like everyone's asking, you asked earlier, how do we compete with Near? Well, we cut out SwapKit, right? SwapKit is adding 10 to 20 basis points on all our trades. Well, we can offer them routes to THORChain for 0 basis points. So, you know, through our aggregator. So that's one way for us to compete. You know, the other thing is on the THORChain interface, you know, we're going to do 20 basis points on trades going through Near. You know, what do the other interfaces charge? So you want to trade on Near for cheap, come to the THORChain swap interface and do it there. So there's other ways to make it cheaper. A lot of the ways the reason the THORChain is expensive is everyone else on top of it. So if you actually to get directly into THORChain, you know, we do start becoming more competitive. There's everyone else on top of it that starts making it more expensive. So we're trying to cut out all of those middlemen.
I just sent you a DM with the BDR Labs account, and yeah, I'll be glad to take a look.
Cool. We'll talk more about it on Saturday too.
I do have a community. This is from a node operator. Is it okay if we transition to that?
Sure.
Yeah, but I had a thing about Monero. I had a comment about Monero. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
So the other thing is too, just so if a Monero pool comes on THORChain, it doesn't mean like instantly every bad actor in the world is going to come on THORChain and start using it. Like we can't, right? The pool is going to start out at 100 grand, and it's going to take time to grow, and because it's so small, like you really aren't going to have any real privacy because it's going to be easy to connect the dots between the trades. Like the pool's going to have to get pretty big and a lot of volume before there's any real privacy happening. So, you know, where I'm going with this, I think it's going to be very hard for any bad actors to be using it right away anyway. might take a while before we actually attract the wrong people.
Well, pool size doesn't relate to how much privacy the trades have. That's zero relationship. You could have a pool with $10,000 in it, and you could have just as much privacy as if there was, $100 million in a pool.
So how does that work?
Yeah, I
How do you
wanted
mean?
to.
How am I wrong? I'm not following you.
Well,
Like if I have a Bitcoin, if I have $100 of Bitcoin, I swap it into Monero, then I swap it back to Bitcoin. Like you can kind of see that, okay, yeah, the trail is kind of cut off, but you can kind of connect the dots in the two, that it's that same $100, right?
Can I jump in there real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, basically, and because I've been allotted with like in Monero chats, and the point is that it works more like money laundering. So so think of it as if they put it in Monero, and then in Monero they can sort of like swap, like go from one wallet to another, and sort of like I forgot the word, but basically they keep swapping, sending it to different wallets, and at some point it's like okay, my money in Monero untraceable. From there you don't have to necessarily send back 100 bit into Bitcoin directly. You would slowly do it every once in a while. Like the point is, it doesn't matter what the pool size is as long as you can get into Monero. Then it's fully cut off. Like it would be the last trace. I don't think it would be very easy to see who went out unless you say, well, there isn't a lot of volume. So if we say there's only 2-3 wallets that interacted with buying and we can connect the dot, the same guy who's coming back, that's also assuming that he's going to use the same, like he's going to use THORChain to sell the time he's going to use to sell. I think just the fact that there's going to be volume is going to obfuscate like a lot of the tracing, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, I mean the pool will only tell you how fast somebody can trade, like how much volume they can pass through it, more or less, right? The how much privacy you get is going to be like depending upon something more complicated than that. So you would try, like you say you wanted to kind of clean some Bitcoin or whatever, say that's what your intention. Not that I'm encouraging that or saying it's okay or anything like this, but just hypothetically. You could take your BTC, swap it to some Monero address, and then when it swaps back through the protocol a second time, the Monero, it's coming from a different address than it started, right? So it's not really easy to connect the two in that sense, unless you're doing it like rapid fire, like $100 over, then $100 right back, like within this, within 5 minutes of each other. That would be fairly obvious in that scenario. But obviously you wouldn't, like, if you were really trying to do this, you wouldn't do like 100 over and then 100 back. You would do 100 over and then the next day you'd put 23.45 cents something back or something, just to make it more obscure, and do it over several trades over a period of time. If that's what your intention was, but for purely academic reasons, that's how I think about it.
Okay, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
All right.
But we still want.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Chad.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, Kenton, because you mentioned something really important, links to the question the node operator had, and that's about pool depth. Okay. So we had one node operator reach out to me. He wants to remain anonymous, or her. I don't know. So this is in relation to something Boone's been talking about. Other people have been talking about too, but they've referenced Boone. It's about the POL, and it's about the burn, and the idea of diverting the burn to the POL to deepen the pool. So I'm just going to read it here. We should not be renting liquidity, but divert 20% of the system revenue into POL, which will also double the burn while also making it productive. We can literally monetize a bigger burn, which feeds into itself. And so this is what they propose. So would go 10% TCY, 5% devs, 5% marketing, 60% nodes, 20% POL. The treasury is limited in size, and human LP is generally not happening right now. Within the roadmap, looking at how many assets we're going to add, who maybe add liquidity to these other long tail assets. The protocol is the perfect entity. It doesn't need to be profitable LPing because the liquidity itself is profitable to the protocol. So over time, as the protocol owned liquidity grows, it also increases system revenue for everyone. So yeah, I'll just leave it there. I think it speaks for itself. We know you use we redivert 20% to help, like we could start at 100,000 from a narrow pool or whatever, and you deepen it that way. Chad, maybe I'll kick it to you, or Kenton, if you have any thoughts.
Yeah. So I've never been a fan of the burn. I think the burn is a meme, really. Like we've always, or at least my always mentality is that we always want capital in THORChain to be effective, right? And so Rune that's sitting in a cold wallet somewhere is obviously not a non-productive form of Rune. And when you burn 5% of the supply or whatever that thing is, 5% of the income, you are rewarding everybody who is a Rune holder relative to how much Rune that person individually holds, whether it's active or passive Rune. And I'd rather have to reinforce or reward the active participants of Rune rather than ones that just sit in cold storage for obvious reasons. So I've never been a big fan of the burn. I know it just creates this kind of like, I don't know, it's a marketing idea, really. Like if realistically speaking, 5% burn of the system income is like not significant enough to really cause any kind of real like, price wise action, to be honest with you. It's just not generating enough burn to really have anything substantial, and it just becomes like a meme that we tell ourselves in our communities that like this is, oh, we got a 5% burn, and it really means nothing, but it means something in people's heads than practically speaking. So I've always been against it. The community voted, and that's what it is. Um, uh, I do like the idea of of some percentage going to the POL to provide more liquidity to the pools to get them deeper. We already have an intention. JP and I have spoken in the past about whenever we launch a new chain, we'll put $100,000 of the treasury's money into that particular new chain, whether it be Solana or Zcash or whatever. If it becomes like a problem where we're adding so many chains that we just can't keep doing it because it's just a lot of money, obviously, then we can probably reestablish things, or maybe instead of doing $100,000, we can start doing $50,000 or $25,000 on these, especially these smaller pools, smaller chains like Stellar Lumens, for example. It has some volume on Near, but the volume is like very very small. So maybe we wouldn't put 100,000 in that particular case. I don't know. I'm open to it. I think what this person's like proposing is a reasonable proposition, and I'm open to talking more about it.
Okay, there we go. Slamhammer, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to some extent with you, Chad, in that the burn as it is right now is not having any meaningful impact on the price. I do think that there's two things. One is that I think there is still some value in, even if it is a meme, in using those kind of things to win community sentiment, because I think at times THORChain's taken the stance of, we have the best product, and which I do believe we do, but that's all we need to do, and we don't need to focus on sort of selling it. And I know things are shifting with Kenton's efforts and things like that, but I do think it's a good show that we care about sentiment. And I think the second point is that um, I have something drafted up. I need to finish editing it this weekend, and then publish it. But essentially, I think as THORChain currently stands, the protocol's operation is relatively agnostic to the price of Rune, right? So the only thing that, from my perspective, is affected by it, especially now that we're adjusting the security caps, is that when Rune price goes down, obviously ARBs remove assets from the pool, and then pool depth decreases. But with how efficient our liquidity is at the moment, Rune price would really have to fall for that to be an impact. The reason why I'm bringing up price is, I think, when we're talking about sentiment and marketing and rebranding and things like this, Kenton, you put a very good post in the Discord. I do have this in my head that we are really going to be able to put all of this behind us when we start seeing some Rune price appreciation, especially given that when that happens, synth liquidity, the pressure is alleviated there. That seems to have a positive effect on TCY, given that that trades between sort of a sixth and a seventh price of Rune and things like that. And so, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is I believe strongly in the product. I think, all of the features and things that you're discussing are excellent. I just think if we are really trying to capture hearts and minds and improve sentiment, I think we do need to have some focus on the Rune price as well.
Yeah, I mean, uh, for me, this is just my own personal 2 cents, but I'm more of a fundamentalist. Like, I care less about sentiment. And I think in my worldview is that sentiment should follow fundamentals. So when sentiment should go up because we just launched Memolist, for example, right? When we do something on the protocol that really improves its kind of its fundamentals, or conversely the opposite, something happens and it really hurts our fundamentals. The sentiment should, in theory, should follow that. And that's obviously it's a little bit ideologue perspective, um, but I don't want to spend I wouldn't want to spend my time trying to like hack sentiment in the community, and rather just do it through providing actual features that actually matter, that actually will improve. Like we were talking before about speed. How fast we can execute our trades. That should be a positive kind of. That should improve our sentiment, right? Limit swap should improve sentiment, right? Memolist should improve sentiment. Adding more chain should improve sentiment. Monero should improve sentiment. Like all these things. This is how I want to improve sentiment, is through that. I don't want to do it through this like, oh, we're going to burn 5% and it's going to mean nothing for the actual protocol, but we'll convince everybody it does. Like that just, to me, is just like the wrong way to go at it in my own 2 cents.
Yeah, it's interesting conversation between, the sentiment of the market and then like what's the practical application of what we're doing. Because, the deflationary narrative, it is popular, but maybe there is a way we can have our cake and eat it too. If with the POL idea, you are technically burning the asset because the POL can never be withdrawn. And then we're also deepening the liquidity of the pools. Interesting conversation to be sure. Kenton, were you trying to say something?
I was just curious. Let's like logically understand what Chad is saying. I'm curious. So kind of one of the ways I viewed the burn is a way to get Rune out of weak hands, and as a way to suck Rune off of decentralized exchanges. And so I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying in theory, if we increase the Rune burn and we're burning all this Rune, in my mind, it's just slowly reducing the supply on Binance. And if you agree with that, does that not have some value to the protocol? Like make things better for us?
Removing Rune from like Binance or whatever.
Yeah, getting basically I feel like we have a tail wagging the dog scenario where I cannot but feel the price of Rune is dictated on Binance, where it should be dictated on THORChain, and because there's such a big supply there.
Yeah, they have a big. So that's it's. They don't have a lot of. I don't know what the trade volume is. Like, what matters more is the trade volume. So how much Rune is traded on THORChain versus how much Rune is traded on Binance. That tells you how much each exchange contributes to the price of whatever Rune is. Binance, they have a lot of Rune, but it's not used for trading. It's people's deposits for the vast majority of it, at least, right? So it's not really used to buy and trade. People just buy it and they just sits in there in the cold storage on Binance, and it doesn't really contribute to the price of Rune in one direction or the other.
Okay, cool.
Well, go ahead, Simon.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think the thing, Kenton, is I completely agree with your aim, right? In terms of driving Rune into for me, it's into more activity within the protocol, right? Whenever I see those Thor info bots updates come out, and I see the fact that about, let's say, 40% of Rune is actually active in the protocol. We have so much Rune floating in wallets and on centralized exchanges. And when I compare that to a chain like Ethereum or Solana or something like that, where their token isn't even as fundamental to the protocol operation as Rune is, but they have higher staking participation and things like that. I do think, really, how are we able to drive more activity to the protocol? And I think, but I guess to Chad's point, the difficulty is when we have a mechanism like the burn, it rewards people who are just sitting there doing nothing, right? The only way that it gets it out of the weak hands is if those people actually sell, due to price appreciation or whatever it is. And perhaps that's the mechanism that will eventually work. But it's a very difficult thing to try and increase network participation, increase the price, and at the same time get more activity into the protocol, because usually that kind of activity is incentivized through things like inflation.
Yeah, I think if you want to get Rune out of Binance, you want to get Rune out of cold storage, we have to give them an avenue to invest Rune on the protocol. And we already have that. We got bonds, we got pools and stuff like this. But there's always room to improve to make it more appetizing or make it more financially interesting, to give people reasons to put their Rune in the network and be productive in one sense or another, rather than just trying to convince people just to take their Rune out of Binance. Give them a reason, and making improvements to being an LP. Like maybe that's the thing we got to do, right? Think of something we can do to change the LP structure to make it more interesting, more valuable. I don't know. I haven't thought much about LP in a long time, just because we've been focused on other things, but at some point my brain will probably go back to it, and I'll maybe think of something.
I think it's gonna be bonding. It's got to be simple, stupid simple. Stake your Rune, get yield. Right, the LPing is too even if it's just basic, regular, just dealing with your permanent loss, is still too much cognitive burden. Yeah. But there's something I want to add to the whole burn. People talk about, the burn should go up, 50%, whatever, and it's like that's gonna have zero impact on the price. Like the majority of all the burn does right now is just prevent Rune from being sold. The buy pressure is already occurring, and then the 5% is burned. So when we're burning that 5%, it's just preventing that Rune from being sold. Whereas the other Rune from the protocol revenue, most of that's going to bond providers, and it's sitting there. It's not being sold. So the buy pressure is done, right? And so all the burn does is prevent future sell pressure. So if we increase the burn percentage, all that's going to do is just decrease future potential sell pressure. It's going to have no immediate impact on the price. So I feel like a lot of people don't get that. The Rune going to bond providers is in effect tying up Rune so it can't be sold. And they've proven to be like strong hands.
I think that's kind of true in the short term, but I mean, I've been looking back to January, where I don't think looking past that is relevant, just due to the number of changes we've had since then. And the total bonded Rune has stayed relatively constant, right, around the 100 million mark. And I think if what you're saying is true, Kenton, we should see more of a steady increase in that. So I do think over time, bond providers are taking yield or things like that, and are cashing out to some extent.
Yeah, but I mean, dude, you got to put this year into context. Like, this has been brutal. I think it's pretty friggin' amazing that the bonded Rune has gone sideways from January 1 to today. Like, that's incredible. You know what I mean? Like, there's people selling. There's definitely people who have unbonded and bond providers gone because they're done with THORChain. The token's down, whatever. It's not just skimming yield. Right? If we had the complete opposite year, where everything was banging, positive news, everything's good, we're growing, volumes up, all this great stuff, I'm inclined to think we would see the opposite. We would see more Rune bonded in the nodes. So I think to say that we're total Rune bonded in nodes right now is even. I think that's pretty amazing. We've done a pretty darn good job.
Yeah, those are diamond hands right there. And running a node is not a cheap process, but it costs money to run a node. And so you, as an operator, you kind of have to sell some rune just to cover your operational costs. You know, so if things are going sideways, that's quite bullish, to be
Yes.
honest.
Biolabs, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I'm actually curious. Well, because right now, we're talking about token utility of Rune, and I was curious about THORFi and whether this would ever come back in the picture. And if it would,
No.
at least, no, it wouldn't.
No, Rugerian app layer. I was just going to nip this in the butt right now. Rugerian app layer is where those kind of primitives will exist. It exists on top of THORChain. If you don't know what that is, I can send you some information. But no, there will be no lending directly on THORChain ever again.
Will does Rugera ever like directly give say utility to the Rune token, as in the average person, say you buy $100 of Rune and you could do something with it, right?
On the app layer itself? Oh, go ahead, Chad. You go ahead.
Yeah, I mean using the Rune asset for some purposes on app layer, like that could totally happen, and it probably is in some extent. But also half the income that the Rugi apps make gets pushed into the reserve, which eventually will be used to pay node operators and LPs and whatnot. So the revenue that these apps will make or are making feeds back into the Rune asset in the end.
That's why I encourage you, Bior. If you don't know what Rugera is, you definitely need to check it out, because the primitives that are coming are going to be incredible, and it's something that you can plug into your interface as well. But go ahead. I think you're trying to speak.
Yeah, I do know what Rugera is on the surface level, because I used to follow Kujira a lot. And then when the whole thing they swapped to Rugera, during that time I was very busy building, so I didn't follow a lot. So I'd be very interested to look into it. But mainly what I wanted to say there was, I mean, ever since I got into THORChain, I always thought that it would be very interesting if there would be a specific utility, say, for the average person who, say, has only $100 or $200, and they could buy the Rune to do something with it, say, like they would actually want, let's say, a service or a product, whatever it is, and it would require them to buy the Rune, and that would create demand for the token coming from like the average person. Compared to right now, it's mainly like people who buy Rune to run nodes, right?
I think the closest thing that we've got to that, which I think is a really good thing, is B-Rune. So essentially, that's something that's been built on the app layer, which because at the moment you have to contact a node operator, get whitelisted, and there's also only 100 slots per node. So usually node operators will have a limit of at least 1,000 Rune. But there's an app that's been launched on the app layer, which would essentially just allow an average user to bond their Rune, even if they had 5-10 Rune, and manage it that way. So I think that's probably what I would think is the healthiest way for even small Rune holders to participate in the protocol.
Okay. If you guys don't mind, I want to do a slight change here. This is squarely on me, by the way. I had this idea, and here's the thing: is because I don't have the technical, prowess or knowledge of THORChain, because I'm not competent in that arena. I don't know when I have an idea if it's just stupid or if I should keep going down the rabbit hole. So this kind of relates to what we're talking about with node operators, the amount that we have, how decentralized we are, and the security cap, right? Because I think most here people agree the security cap has got to go if Rugera is going to function normally. So I want to make more slam bammers. I want to make more Kentons. I want to make, new node operators eventually at some point, Chad, right? Like we're going to scale, hopefully, right? And if the more Rune that's in the system, the harder it is for THORChain to be captured. That's the ultimate goal. So I was curious if it makes sense, like if we had a community initiative at some point where we actually, started training node operators who showed potential, if we could crowdsource, figure out some people. And my question is, and I'm going to break it down a little bit, does it make sense as part of this community initiative if we use the reserve to be a temporary bond provider? Like if you had 300,000 Rune from the reserve be a bond provider, this would do two things. One, the bond provider, that would not inflate the circulatory supply. Sorry, I totally botched that. Because the rewards would be going essentially to the address of the reserve. And additionally, if the node operator was incompetent, was like slam derper or whatever, right? You could give the churn out command and make that node go away if something bad was happening. Does that make sense at all, or is that just a stupid idea?
Think about that for a second. Well, the question, so it raises a lot of layers to your question here. It's actually a more complicated than you probably thought about it as. First of all, like, who controls the reserve, right? And who's going to decide which nodes get 300,000 rune or whatever? Like, that's the first thing. And like, how does that go? Maybe it's the protocol. It does a vote. Maybe, we transfer some of the reserve to the treasury, then the treasury kind of controls it, has communications and relationships with, people who want to operate nodes, whatever. That's one layer to it. The other layer is that like adding 300,000 rune to a node in this case, does it, like, how much does it really change, of the protocol itself? Like, if the security cap is no longer like a hard cap anymore, it's quite soft, and it's still hard technically right now in this current moment, but it might change in the future. Then it becomes like, well, how much extra value does it really give to the protocol? That becomes a kind of a debatable topic to some degree. Because in the end, like, what makes something decentralized is the number of hands and the amount of of liquidity or volume, not volume, but the amount of like the number of hands, how much money those hands have to make something decentralized. If you just have the protocol be like the hands, like not the capital, but not the hands, then it's like it really doesn't really provide that much, value. I would argue at that point.
Could I add something right there?
Yeah, go ahead.
My idea was it wouldn't be forever, right? It's like you give them maybe like 4 months and say, listen, the reserve's gonna be a bond provider for 4 months. You have 4 months to find enough other bond providers. And you got to try and sustain yourself after that, right? Because you're right, the bond providing from the reserve is kind of hokey. I don't know how you say it.
Yeah.
Do you think that would make sense?
If you want to do it as like a training wheels thing, maybe. I wonder if like,
because the idea for me is just to increase the number of unique node operators, because ideally you don't want the reserve. I would just love to find bond providers and just get them on those, like Slambammer. I help people find Slambammer.
Here's an interesting point, is like, as long as the protocol is designed the way it is, and the fact that we have like 6 Asgards, like, we try to make efforts in the design of the protocol to make sure that each Asgard vault has a relatively equal amount of bond. It's not exact, but it's reasonably close as we can get it. And how we establish that is just by saying, like, by having a maximum number of rune bonded to an individual node means that somebody's going to have, instead of one big node, they're going to have 3 separate nodes or something like this. And we also set up a minimum amount of bond, right? Which is, I think right now is like 300,000 rune. If you were to cut that 300,000 rune down to, let's look at something really small. Just call it 10,000 rune, 5,000, 1,000 rune, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Then you just get into a problem where, like, you are adding a bunch more nodes into the system that's not really, providing any, financial security. Yes, you're decentralizing more in some ways because you have just more individuals, hypothetically. So you're creating that kind of scenario. But then it also becomes like, well, if I want to attack the network, I can just create 100 nodes that have 1,000 bond each and attack it, and then it becomes like a cheaper to attack in that sense. I don't know. It's more complicated than it sounds at its face value of how that would look. We already kind of do that with the treasury now. Like, we sometimes have deals with people in our industry that we will bond a node for them. They will operate the node. They get to keep the yield of that node, but we keep the rune we use to bond, just to help, like, THORSec, for example, might be an example of that, or I don't know if we have a deal like this with Liquify, but sometimes we have partners we do this with. But that's using the treasury's money rather than the reserves money.
Yeah, and I don't want to take this space up with my half-baked idea. I was just curious, unless I know Slam Bammer, if you're trying to say something, go ahead.
Yeah, and look, if I'm honest, so I think I definitely take Chad's point in that the actual security that's derived for the network is the value that people put in it, right? And I think, one of the reasons why it is still important that node operators do put up capital is otherwise they've got to have skin in the game.
Yeah.
So it, and I'll also say that I like your idea in theory in that I think it will maybe try and get some people out of the woodwork to give it a go. But I'll also say that I think that they need to have more skin in the game because otherwise they won't last. I can tell you in my experience, and maybe this year has been a harder year than most because we have gone through a lot of changes, but getting bond providers as a new node operator can be challenging, right? So even if you undercut in fees and things like this, trust is a big thing in the space, especially when you're putting up a lot of capital. People want to know that they'll be able to reach you, and people want to know that you know what you're doing. So even if you give them a few months leeway, I can see it still being very hard. I mean, that said, I'm always reaching out to people that I see around, in the spaces and things like this. If anyone wants to talk about becoming a node operator, please do reach out. I'm more than happy to give you my time. If you're around Western Europe, I'm even happy to meet up. Just it's important for the network, but I don't think getting the bond is immediately, at least for that short term, is going to be the bottleneck.
Yeah, I'm just trying, because like you said, trust is a big factor, right? And that's why I think it should be a community initiative. And I don't want our trusted node operators to ultimately be our undoing because it's an attack vector, right? If you have a hyper concentration, which is I love RuneTard so much because he realized that and he helped train people, like yourself. So anyway, I don't want to consume the space with this idea. I just thought I'd mention it, but thank you. That was very interesting context, Slam Bammer. Okay, is there anything else, guys? I feel like we covered a lot of ground here. Chad, Kenton, you guys have any other things?
I don't. I think if Chad doesn't, we should wrap it up.
Well, Bio Labs, did you just raise your... Oh, go ahead, Chad. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So just real quick, I totally forgot to make this message at the start. I guess there's a lot less people now, but at BR Labs, as we are heading for the mainnet launch, we are looking to hire for any security devs who can help us basically audit our app. We need a full, and it could be contractor work, and it can go part-time. I know in THORChain there's some of the best devs, so it would be really good if we can get some people from the THORChain devs to help us. Anyone who has any bandwidth to do part-time work, it doesn't matter. If you can just send us a message, or you can DM me on my own Twitter, which is Goatski. So it would be Goat and then with an S, and then you put key in the end. And I'll be more than happy to take a look. And if anyone knows anyone also, I'm more than happy if you can refer them to us, because it's been hard to find people, especially because we have a Flutter app. So I just wanted to say that. And thank you for giving me the chance to speak on this panel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to shout him out in the crowd, but Joel might know some people too, but that might be me just talking bull honky, but he knows a lot of people. So maybe you can reach out to him as well. Okay, guys, I think this has been an excellent conversation. Chad, thank you so much. You're so generous with your time. You've been consistently doing 2 hours. I know you're so freaking busy. So I want to just kick it to you real quick. Is there any final thoughts or anything you have before we wrap?
No, man. Just I plan to keep shipping and improving the protocol's fundamentals as best as I can. That's always been my focus, and it'll continue to be for the foreseeable future.
Yes, and you know what? You're absolutely doing that. I'm so glad you're back, man. You're a coding beast. And if anyone missed the beginning of this space, we talked about a lot of really interesting ideas and things and considerations regards to THORChain. So I highly recommend that you share this space or listen to recording and do both, right? Okay, guys. So with that said, I think we're going to wrap here. This Saturday, we're going to have Bio Labs, the person up here. Give them a follow. All right. They had a little introduction today, and we're going to be breaking them down fully on Saturday. So really looking forward to that. We have some more spaces coming. We don't quite have it yet worked out on the schedule as far as I know, but we'll probably announce something on Saturday for sure. Otherwise, thank you guys so very much. I am so excited. I love where we're going with THORChain. I am so bullish, you guys. I think we're doing all the right things. And as always, we don't obfuscate. We don't censor. Everything was open protocol. We develop in the open. We talk about all issues. We don't believe in censorship. So, you know, I'm so happy for this community. I'm so happy for people like Chad, Kenton, Slambammer, and everyone else listening. I thank you all. So with that said, guys, we're going to wrap. Thank you all so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.